He thought he was eating right. Every morning, same routine. Orange juice, whole grain cereal, a couple of slices of toast with peanut butter, maybe some turkey sausage on the side. It looked like a kidney-friendly breakfast. Then his labs came back and something had shifted. His creatinine was up. His eGFR had dipped slightly from the last visit. His doctor asked, "What are you eating for breakfast?" Here is what he found out. Those kidney-friendly foods he trusted were not automatically harmful, but together, every single morning, they were adding more sodium, more phosphorus, more added sugar, and more protein than his kidneys could handle quietly. Not because any one food was the villain, because the combination and the portions had quietly changed what his labs were telling the story about. If you are over 60, especially if your kidney function has changed, your creatinine has been flagged, your eGFR has trended down, or your doctor has started watching your labs more closely, your breakfast may be doing more work than you realize. And I do not mean work in a good way. I am Grace Wells, kidney and diabetes health educator for older adults. And what I want to walk you through today is not a list of foods to fear. It is the 4 things hiding inside common breakfast choices that can quietly put extra pressure on aging kidneys, and then 3 practical swaps that can make the same morning meal look very different on your next lab report. If your labs have been shifting and you have not looked at your breakfast yet, this may be the most useful 12 minutes you spend this week. Let us start with what most people miss when they think about kidney-friendly foods. They focus on the obvious. Avoid bananas if your potassium is high. Avoid salt. Cut the red meat. That framing is not wrong, but it is incomplete. And for breakfast specifically, it misses 4 layers that do not always announce themselves on the front of the package. The first layer is sodium. And breakfast is often where the sodium load of the day begins before most people even realize it. Think about the cereal box sitting in most kitchens right now. A single serving of many popular cereals, even the ones marketed as whole grain or heart healthy, can contain anywhere from 160 to 350 milligrams of sodium. Add 2 slices of bread, and depending on the brand, that is another 220 to 300 milligrams. If there is any processed meat at that table, even turkey bacon or turkey sausage, you may be looking at another 400 to 700 milligrams right there. In some mornings, the entire sodium budget that a kidney patient should stay under for the whole day gets used up before 9 a.m. Why does this matter for kidney health after 60? Because kidneys regulate sodium balance. When kidney function is reduced, the kidneys cannot clear sodium as efficiently. Excess sodium leads to fluid retention, which raises blood pressure, which then puts more strain back on the kidneys. It is a loop. And breakfast starts that loop before most people have had their first cup of coffee. Now, does this mean every senior needs to panic about cereal? No. Your lab results and your doctor's guidance set the target. But if your blood pressure is not well controlled, if your eGFR is below 60, or if your doctor has mentioned watching your sodium, knowing that breakfast can carry 800 to 1,400 milligrams of sodium before lunch is a very important starting point. If this is already giving you something to check in your own kitchen, that is exactly why this channel exists. The second layer is something that rarely shows up in kidney diet conversations. Added sugar. Most people associate kidney diet with protein, potassium, and phosphorus, but added sugar has a direct connection to kidney stress, and breakfast is full of it. Here is why it matters. Older adults with type 2 diabetes or prediabetes are at significantly higher risk for chronic kidney disease. Blood sugar spikes increase kidney workload. They also contribute to inflammation inside the small blood vessels of the kidneys over time. In many common breakfast choices, even the ones that feel virtuous, drive blood sugar up fast. Flavored instant oatmeal packets, granola, fruit juice, some cereals that are advertised as low-fat. Even some whole grain bread varieties contain added sugars that raise the glycemic load of a meal faster than people expect. The orange juice many people drink in the morning is a particularly good example. 8 ounces of commercial orange juice typically contains around 22 grams of sugar, no fiber to slow the absorption, and a moderate potassium load on top of that. For someone managing kidney function, diabetes risk, or elevated potassium, orange juice is not the innocent drink the label implies. This is not about cutting all sweetness out of life. It is about recognizing that when you have reduced kidney function and blood sugar instability, the combination accelerates risk faster than either one alone. If your doctor is watching both your eGFR and your HbA1c, your breakfast is speaking to both of those numbers every single morning. The third layer is the one that surprises most people, even those who have been following a kidney diet for months. Phosphorus additives. Natural phosphorus, the kind found in whole foods like eggs, meat, and dairy, is absorbed differently than phosphorus additives. The body absorbs roughly 40 to 60% of naturally occurring phosphorus. But inorganic phosphorus, the kind added to processed foods as a preservative, emulsifier, or color stabilizer, is absorbed at a much higher rate, closer to 90% or more. Why does this matter for kidneys? Because in CKD, the kidneys lose their ability to filter and excrete excess phosphorus. When phosphorus builds up in the blood, it pulls calcium out of the bones over time and contributes to vascular calcification, which means the walls of blood vessels can stiffen. This is a serious concern in moderate to advanced CKD, but the habits that raise phosphorus tend to develop long before the diagnosis reaches those stages. Now, where does breakfast come in? Processed meats, the turkey bacon, the turkey sausage, the deli slices that feel like a lighter protein choice, are typically loaded with phosphate additives. Check the ingredient list. If you see sodium phosphate, disodium phosphate, calcium phosphate, or any variation of the word phosphate in that list, the phosphorus in that food is hitting the bloodstream at a very different efficiency than what the nutrition label number suggests. Most nutrition labels list total phosphorus, not the bioavailability. So a serving of turkey sausage might read 180 milligrams of phosphorus on the label, but if it contains phosphate additives, your kidneys may be handling significantly more than that number implies. This does not mean never eat turkey sausage again. For someone with healthy kidneys and normal phosphorus levels, this may not matter at all. But for someone with stage 3 or stage 4 CKD, especially if their parathyroid hormone is elevated and their doctor has started asking about phosphorus intake, the ingredient list of their breakfast protein matters far more than most people have been told. Ask your doctor or renal dietitian where your phosphorus levels stand before making any dramatic changes. But knowing to look at the ingredient list, not just the nutrition facts panel, is one of the most practical tools you have right now. The fourth layer comes back to something simple but often underestimated in kidney diet conversations: total protein and how much of it lands at breakfast. For most healthy adults, a protein-rich breakfast is excellent advice. For older adults with significant kidney function decline, the picture is more nuanced. The kidneys process the waste products that come from protein metabolism. The more protein consumed, the more nitrogen waste the kidneys must filter and excrete. In early CKD, especially stage 1 and 2, protein restriction is generally not recommended and may actually be harmful if it leads to muscle loss. But in stage 3B, stage 4, and beyond, many nephrologists begin discussing protein moderation because the filtration burden becomes meaningful. Here is how this connects to breakfast specifically. 2 eggs, 2 slices of turkey sausage, and a glass of milk can easily add 30 to 40 grams of protein to a morning meal. If your dinner was also protein heavy, the total daily protein load may be higher than your CKD stage supports without extra kidney strain. This does not mean protein is the enemy. Muscle loss is a real and serious concern for adults over 60. The goal is not to eliminate protein, It is to understand your personal target based on your current eGFR, your lab trends, your muscle mass, and your doctor's guidance. If your nephrologist or primary care doctor has never specifically discussed your daily protein target with you, that is one of the most valuable questions you can bring to your next appointment. Ask, given where my eGFR is right now, how many grams of protein per day is appropriate for me? That one answer can change how you structure every meal, including breakfast. Now let us talk about what this actually looks like at the table, because understanding the 4 layers is only useful if it leads somewhere practical. The first swap is what you drink in the morning. If orange juice has been part of your routine, consider moving to water with a lemon wedge or a small portion of a lower potassium fruit like apple or grape if your potassium is not flagged. If your potassium levels are normal and your doctor has not mentioned concern, fresh orange juice in a small portion may not need to change. But commercial juice at 8 ounces or more, consumed daily, adds both sugar and potassium in a form that offers very little benefit for kidney health after 60. Your labs will tell you how much this matters for you personally. The second swap is your breakfast protein. If processed meat has been your default, even the turkey varieties, look at the ingredient list before you assume it is kidney friendly. Eggs are a more predictable protein choice because the phosphorus is naturally occurring and lower in additives. Plain Greek yogurt can work for some people, depending on potassium and phosphorus targets, but check your numbers first. If you enjoy cereal or toast as your base, adding a single egg rather than 2 sausage patties may give you protein with a cleaner phosphorus profile. The third swap is the cereal or bread itself. Not all whole grain choices are equal for kidney health. Look for options where sodium is under 150 milligrams per serving, the ingredient list is short, and phosphate additives are not present. Many kidney-friendly breakfast cereals exist, but the label matters more than the marketing claim on the front of the box. A registered renal dietitian can give you a specific list based on your stage of CKD, which is far more useful than any general ranking you might find online. Before we close, I want to come back to the man who changed his breakfast. His labs did not shift overnight. They shifted slowly, over months, as his kidneys aged and became less efficient at handling a breakfast that had not changed. The food was not new. His kidneys were different. That is the core message for kidney health after 60. The same breakfast that worked at 45 may be asking more of your kidneys at 68. Not because it is suddenly toxic, because the system doing the processing has changed. And most people are not told this clearly enough. Kidney-friendly foods are real. The concept matters. But kidney-friendly is not a fixed label. It is a moving target based on your current eGFR, your potassium and phosphorus lab values, your blood pressure, your blood sugar trends, your medications, and your doctor's guidance. If you walk away with one thing from today, let it be this. Look at your breakfast the way your labs do, not with fear, but with information. Check the sodium. Check the ingredient list for phosphate additives. Consider what your blood sugar does in the 2 hours after you eat. And bring a protein question to your next appointment if no one has ever given you a specific target. Your comment today would help more people than you might think. What does your typical breakfast look like right now? Or if you have already made a change because of what your doctor said, what was the one thing that shifted first? Write it below. Someone reading this in the same situation may find your answer more useful than anything I just said. If this gave you a more specific answer than the usual advice about eating healthy, that is what this channel is for. Kidney health after 60 is not one-size guidance. It is your labs, your stage, your medications, and your daily habits working together or working against each other. If you want that kind of specific, practical information in your feed regularly, this channel is worth staying with. Next, we are going to talk about creatinine. Specifically, if your creatinine is rising after 60, what are the 5 questions you should be asking your doctor? because there are reasons creatinine rises that have nothing to do with kidney damage, and knowing the difference changes the conversation you have in that office. That video is coming up next.